Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Caprera, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's presentation. Digital accessibility shouldn't be a thousand-piece puzzle. With a rapidly changing digital environment, digital accessibility is crucial for creating a truly inclusive world for everyone. For people with disabilities, it means equal access to online education, healthcare, employment, and e-commerce. In the age of social media, it even means equal access to friendship and social growth. Digital accessibility also fosters independence. It empowers users with disabilities to navigate websites, use digital products without assistance, and opens up a world of information and resources they may not have had access to in the past. I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Information Officer for the Viscardi Center, and I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Mark Pound, Chief Executive Officer at CurbCutOS. Welcome, Mark. We're so pleased that you could join us today to discuss this important topic. I'd like to start by noting that immediately following today's session, you'll be asked to complete a short survey about your experience. The Viscardi Center encourages you to please do so in order to help us continue to provide valuable sessions moving forward. Now, most of you are joining us through the WebEx platform and are hearing the audio by voice over IP through your computers. For the best viewing experience, I encourage you to please download the WebEx application from webex.com. For technical support during the training session, please post your issue within the chat window. For issues loading WebEx or downloading the add-ins, contact WebEx at 1-866-229-3239. Please note that we'll be accepting questions from the audience during today's discussion. You can submit your questions by typing them into the Q&A window located at the bottom right of the screen. We are also live captioning this training session, which you can follow along within the captioning window at the bottom right of the screen below the Q&A window. You must open the window titled Multimedia Viewer to display the captioning. The live captioning link is also available in the chat window located on the right of the screen if you wish to pop it out of the WebEx platform and into a web browser. And lastly, if you choose to use the automated captioning, you may do so by clicking on the closed captioning button located on the bottom left of the screen. But before we get started, we would like for you to answer one quick question. This is being asked to provide a sort of baseline of participants' knowledge and comfort level with our topic today. Please note that your responses are anonymous, and answering the question honestly is essential to helping us understand your needs and our effectiveness. So please take a moment to answer it. The question should be appearing on the right-hand side of your screen. And that question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your understanding of digital accessibility best practices, processes, and metrics? Please use the scale of 1 equal very little understanding, while 5 equals extensive understanding. And we'll wait for WebEx to tally the results. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of 3s and 2s and some 4s as well. So we have a pretty intermediate knowledge-based audience today. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker who will guide us through today's session, Mark Pound. Mark serves as the Chief Executive Officer at CurbCutOS and is a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in developing and commercializing paradigm-shifting solutions with lasting impact. He also has an invisible disability with an inspiring story behind it, which enables him to bring firsthand insights and drive passion to what he does. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I appreciate that. Let me kind of start off with a little bit about myself before we get into the content of today. So, my background, as Mike said, I'm a serial entrepreneur, but my story that brought me into digital accessibility started back in my high school years. I was a quadriplegic on the football field. As I noticed I had no feeling below my neck, I thought, great, I'm going to be living the rest of my life like this. I mean, obviously, I was one of the very few lucky ones that I recovered. I walked off the field, ended up with nerve damage, and then fast forward many years later, after that, I was in a really bad car accident where the witnesses thought we were dead. After the culmination or the aggregation of my football injury with the auto accident, I ended up with multiple spine traumas and nerve damage. I lived in chronic pain, severe chronic pain, was an insomniac for almost 10 years of my life. And I had to take on, well, I woke up one day and I said, either this is going to own me or I'm going to own it. And I chose to own it. And so I endured a journey where I had to struggle and take ownership. Fast forward, ended up with cervical fusion and was on the road to recovery to where I'm at today. I basically lost all of my 40s of my life. And so I feel like I'm 10 years younger than I am, which is a positive element. But that is my driving passion behind the reason why I'm involved with digital accessibility, because I know what those struggles are like. And it's, if you're born with or end up with a disability, you shouldn't be disadvantaged, because we all want the same thing. We all want to enjoy life, and we should have the ability to do so. And so that's my passion. That's my understanding, and that's the reason why I will fight for this. And until the point and the day comes when the end user experience is as equal for anybody with any type of disability as somebody without a disability. So with that said, I'd like to go on to the next part is, let's reflect on the title of today for a minute, which is digital accessibility shouldn't be a 1,000-piece puzzle. And why did we come up with that? Because over our many years at CurbCutOS, we've experienced listening to company stakeholders say the same things. And really what it is to them, it is a 1,000-piece puzzle. So that brings us into the myths that have been created because of that 1,000-piece puzzle. One side, everyone is overwhelmed, no idea where to go, what to do, confusing solution silos, confusing standards, no business cases to speak of or metrics to speak of, inconsistent audits, which then lead them into a routine high cost, which is the break fix model, and getting lost and being overwhelmed with technology when many people out there have no idea what's going on underneath the hood. They just want to get it addressed. So the result of that is a mindset. The mindset is, oh, this is just a compliance checkbox. It's just a legal matter. That's all I need to deal with. Nothing else matters. The other part we've always heard too is, oh, the market's not big enough. We don't need to pay attention to that. We just need to do a few things, make sure we don't get sued or set ourselves up to be sued. Then the other part to that is fixes. Oh, it's just one time. Automated only, that's fine. Oh, wait a minute, but don't we have to be 100%? And then there's the cost with no return. The thing we've heard from people in design world is, oh, we've spent all this time putting our brand together, it's going to ruin it. And then the other question we get a lot is, so show me a website that's accessible versus one that's not. When really the truth or the matter of fact is, there should be no difference. So Mike, if you could take us to the next slide, please. So what ends up happening is end users end up frustrated. So not only do we have company stakeholders who are overwhelmed with a 1,000-piece puzzle, according to them, and these myths and this mindset. You also end up with end users that are just irritated. Their user experience is ignored. They're full, they live in a world of empty promises. Oh, here comes something that's going to solve everything when it doesn't. And so, Mike, if you can go to the next slide. So the bottom line here is it has to change. If you really boil it down, it's like we're living in the definition of insanity. Here we are in 2024, ever increasing digital world, but yet we have an ignored and growing population. And here's another interesting aspect to this is we have upcoming future generations, all they know is digital. If we don't address digital accessibility now, and those future generations grow up, guess what's going to happen to the commerce in this world, which is already being impacted as it is today? It's going to have even greater impacts. So it's kind of bestowed upon us that if we don't do something now and fix this, it's only going to exacerbate or grow exponentially as the future generations start to age and or come across other disabilities during the course of life. There's dismal year-over-year improvements, if any. I mean, we've all know the stats and the facts behind that. And as we like to say, the 1.0 solutions, which may have, filled a space where they were and where we are, they're not working. If they were, we wouldn't have these dismal year-over-year improvements. If you can go to the next slide, Mike. So where does that bring us? We got to establish critical building blocks because that's the mindset we have to look at this as. It's not we come in and then we're overwhelmed and it's like we don't know where to go, what to do. It's like boil it down, make it simple, and give something with the stakeholders that empowers them. Because once we empower the stakeholders at companies, the end users are going to benefit. So it's like what we like to say is a 2.0 accessibility framework. What are those components? And those components look overwhelming, but really when you boil them down and walk through them, they're not. A solution, it should be turnkey. It should have that simple front end. It should address the complexities of the technology on the back end. So then when those company stakeholders know what's being done, they can turn it over to the tech departments or whomever is addressing those technology elements. And then the programmers, the developers, everybody that's involved with technology then has the same tool they're working with. There should be an alignment with the company with budget, timing, and objectives. There should be a business case, one to establish, one to measure, one to grow upon, so then that stakeholder is empowered with, oh, look, I actually am getting results from this. There should be a roadmap involved with year-over-year understanding that this isn't just a one-time. This isn't just, oh, we're done, we don't need to do anything else. There should be an annual line item with the business case, with those metrics, and then with a plan of action. It will end up giving them competitive advantages that they can identify during the business case, during that roadmap, and then execute and then gain leverage points on them. And then obviously the user experience should be embraced and it should become memorable. And then growth, their opportunity exists there to capture and expand in a new market. And, as I'm sure everyone knows here, for the most part, this is a massive market. Mike, if you can go to the next slide, please. So then where do we start? Where is those building blocks? Step one, we have to establish the foundation because it's like anything. If you don't have the proper plan in place, you're going to end up right back where you started. So there's an analysis and there's objectives that need to be established. We need to work on the mindset, shift it to a proactive and opportunity one as opposed to reactive and, oh, I checked the box, we're done. There needs to be oversight on governance because the company stakeholder needs to be supported internally. And that, so we look at the structure, we look at the support mechanisms internally and find out where the gaps are. Resources, staffing and budget. Most company stakeholders are left with very little. And so we need to work with that and be able to support them in that capacity. The business case here, coming up again, we need to look at this from a year-over-year perspective with the objective of decreasing costs, which catches everybody off guard, and realizing our ROI. But let me go back to the decreasing cost point. So if we look at this from a year-over-year standpoint and we maintain that, you enter into a microtransaction level because you're actually staying on top of it, as opposed to, oh, we did a bunch of changes, now we're going to run another audit again. In a year, we do this per month, per quarter. We look at it in a different way. We take inventory during this step. The digital side, the structure side. What are your practices? What are your efforts to date, if any? And then we generate that roadmap year one and thereafter. You can go to the next slide. So step two, we execute upon that roadmap, achieve results, which then give them the empowerment to go to the executive committee if that's where they have to go, and deliver metrics. And they go, wait a minute, this isn't just a compliance checkbox. We're actually seeing something from this. Not only garnering a new market that's sitting there, but also reducing those costs. And then also the year-over-year planning. So, the objectives are achieved: digital assets, audit, and remediate as identified in that roadmap, because it's not 100%. We don't have to do everything at once. There's operational support from managed services and guidance. For example, as CurbCutOS is the company, we look at that and say, look, you do have staffing or resource issues, so we can provide managed services for remediation. We can provide that guidance to actually help you understand, take you on this journey with the objective that we don't always have to be there for you, that you learn enough that you can then start taking over, and we've kind of obsoleted ourselves in some capacities. And then the business case, we need to maintain focus on the business case and deliver that, because obviously I think everybody here knows we prove things out, actually then you're going to get more support in staffing and budget. And then we end with, once that's all said and done, then we have to get back into annual planning. That Q4 planning is always where we do the assessment on what we've done during that course of time, analyze it, develop the forecast, and then generate that roadmap again for the following year and thereafter. Next slide, please, Mike. So a little bit about us. I know there's a lot that we've gone through here within the time, but I want to give you a little bit about us. Obviously, Mike said, we are disabled led. But we're also very seasoned. CurbCutOS, which was rebranded 2 years ago, we started in 2019 as a solopreneur practice. And since 2019, we've actually subcontracted for major competitors. We provide services to them on a white label standpoint. We've served clients from small businesses to enterprise, to the Department of Defense, to state agencies. So we understand the dynamics that are involved across all of those. And then we also deliver turnkey services. So that way you realize you don't have to go one place for websites, one place for apps, one place for content, one place for design, another place. It can become crazy and overwhelming, like I talked about in the very beginning, that 1,000-piece puzzle and those myths. Mike, you can go to the next slide, please. So one key point to where CurbCutOS is today is We have a SaaS platform that's coming out that I'll be able to give you a sneak peek on here shortly. So what is it? The platform recognizes a few things that have come to be in this industry is, inconsistencies. So there needs to be an unbiased center of truth. So we're not a scanning company, but what we do is we aggregate scans. So those scans in an aggregated manner actually capture more barriers or errors, however you want to term it. So then your results from a remediation standpoint are far greater, and then which then improves and impacts the user experience, which is what we're all after. The platform also gives you one location to handle your audits in that unbiased, agnostic manner, which then transfer over into remediation. It generates business case metrics. How much did you spend year over year? What are the results of that? The other thing we're going to be integrating into this platform is what impacts does it have on your brand? What eyeballs had you lost over the course of time because you haven't embraced digital accessibility? And then lastly, everybody's heard, the AI revolution, or as I like to say, AI evolution, because AI needs to have a responsible approach. So it is on our radar. However, if AI, especially in digital accessibility, has to be done right. It has to look at it not just from an automated standpoint, but from a manual standpoint, and look at all the dynamics that are involved with digital accessibility. From that massive amount of data, not only that, it has to have a pure approach. It can't be doctored, it can't be scrubbed, it can't, because the one element that comes into that is the human element. Well, humans by nature love to steer what they want. We can't have that happen with digital accessibility. So that's where our platform comes in amassing this data, and then in a future release, probably in a year or so, we will then evolve into that AI element. So then if I can get into and just kind of show you a quick demo here, I'll give you a sneak peek of the platform. Let me do my screen share. Share. Is it visible?
Yes, we can see it, Mark.
Mike, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So just as a sneak peek here, the one thing we looked at is obviously simplicity, but at the same time, bringing everything under one roof. So where I started with this one is, we bring you into a dashboard where you can start a project. You can actually schedule a call with us if you need help. But let's look at a project. So we have some example projects in here. So as you can see in this one, you can run an automated diagnostic and you can do a manual diagnostic. So if I just show you the manual diagnostic, this tool in itself will show you how you can then test against the different WCAG versions, the different browsers, the different platforms, the different operating systems, and a few of the different assistive technologies. From that manual standpoint, it also then captures, it gives you an issue description, it gives you the code snippets, it will give you the URL of the page, it will come down if it's brand or third party, the type of blocker, the type of priority. We go back to that same project. We've already run an automated one, and you can see we have two of the scanning engines that have run against it. And then what you can see is between the two scanners, just on a visually standpoint here, you can see the differences. In this case, with this example project, SiteMore's caught more violations than Axe did. Axe caught some violations by principle that SiteMore's didn't. And then what we do is we aggregate all those results into a report down here that right now you can export. But then that is one location that captures everything, one location to where remediation can be done and the details are captured, one location that when it is remediated, it can get checked off on. So that way it all then bubbles back up to that company stakeholder. They can see progress is happening. They can see that the objectives are being met and that roadmap is being checked off. That's it at the very high level. Then we also have the capability here to, excuse me, if you have clients of your own, you can manage everything within the system itself. So you could have multiple divisions. You can have, for example, you're a partner of ours and you have your own clients. You can have your own clients within this system and each of the projects that are then within those clients. Okay, I think that covers that. And if you can go to the next slide, Mike. Do you have it? There it is. I know, well,
Nope.
I know we covered a lot in a very short period of time. But I hopefully that was informative and kind of helped you understand that this doesn't need to be a 1,000-piece puzzle and that it could be simplified, and then it is an ongoing journey. And Mike, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Mark. That is just wonderful information. Very exciting. What CurbCut is working on. I'm glad we were able to get a peek behind the curtain to see what the future of web accessibility testing looks like. And I'm sure it was a great benefit to our participants today. So now I'd like to start taking some participant questions. Please keep in mind that we will try and answer as many questions as we can. However, due to the number of participants and the limited time, we may not have the capacity to answer all of them during this webinar. So please enter your questions in the Q&A window below. But to kick things off, I'd like to ask Mark a question myself. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why each of the testing tools produces different results, especially when they should all be following the same WCAG standard?
Yeah, and it's because they all take an interpretation of the WCAG standards. And so that leads to the disparities, and then that leads to the confusion. That's the reason why we choose to then bring them all under one roof.
Okay, thanks. So how does the actual CurbCut solution that you kind of gave us a sneak peek here today differ from the other industry accessibility testing tools?
Well, we take that agnostic, or as I like to say, unbiased center of truth. And that's something to where we don't take an interpretation, and we use the tools that exist and give the factual basis or the truth that then empowers instead of disempowers that stakeholder. Because right now, a stakeholder from a company could come in, understand that oh, I've got this one scanner we're using right now. But what they don't understand is they're only capturing 30 to 50%, maybe at the most, of their errors. And then really it's setting them up to fail, because at the same time, if they then switch companies, then all of a sudden they find out they have different results. And then the other part that has come up is some people have drawn up arbitrary scores, which then has given company stakeholders this artificial peace of mind, like, oh, we've achieved this great score, but what they don't realize is those scores are tied to nothing.
Great. We got one here. Can the CurbCutOS software test websites that have an overlay installed on them?
So it will test the website, and I think that's even a great question, or a bigger question, in that the platform itself, the way it's built is, we don't care if you're using an overlay. We don't care if you're using a competitor. To us, it doesn't matter, because what we want to do is deliver something that you're always going to want on your desktop as a comparison. So for example, if you have an overlay, and from a small business perspective, that may be the only thing they can afford, which is fine. However, you're still going to want to know from a small business standpoint, hey, what is the overlay doing for me and not doing for me? And same thing if you use a competitor. What am I getting? What am I not getting? So that's kind of the truth that we want to be able to deliver and empower those stakeholders again.
We have another one here. What are some of the governance and structure challenges you encountered and we may face when it comes to implementing digital accessibility?
I think it goes back to all those myths, oh, it's just a compliance checkbox. Oh, it's just a legal matter, and part of it is education. But I think the other part to that is, from the governance standpoint, is you're being set up to fail. All eyes are on you. It gets thrown on somebody's desk, or if the company's appointed somebody, it's like, okay, where do I go? Where do I begin? And then all of a sudden you get these disparate scores or these disparate results. And then whoever gave you that responsibility comes back and says, see, I told you. So we have to look at it from a maturity model standpoint, if you will. And from a maturity model standpoint, we have to look at, hey, what is the mindset within your organization? And then how do we then go about changing that mindset by looking at the key centers of influence? Is it the executive staff? Is it somebody in a certain department that can lead that charge? And how do we go about doing that? So that way, you're surrounding yourself internally while you're also in charge of this responsibility, and you're gaining an additional empowerment and support within.
All right. We've got a few more here. What is your recommendation on how many times per year should an accessibility audit be performed?
Well, it kind of depends if you have a static website or if you have a website that is much more dynamic with continuous changes. If it's static, you could go probably quarterly, but if most websites, and even on an e-commerce standpoint, you're constantly making changes, that's what the software we have gives you the ability to do, because it is cost effective, to where you can run those scans and see, oh, look, we just made updates. What's our audit results now? How can we stay hand in hand along with the changes that we're doing, so that way we maintain not only the accessibility to the user experience, but we can also keep our costs down, because the results from that continuous audit process, you'll start to learn where most of the errors are happening. Then you can go to your dev team and say, hey, here's the majority of errors in these areas, so let's address these the next release, and then the next release. So over a period of time, it's part education to the dev team, and then passing that knowledge, which then reduces the amount of errors over a period of time. So long-winded answer to that question, but I would say if you're making routine changes, I would do it on a month-to-month basis.
Great. Can the CurbCutOS solution provide auditing and testing results for documents, PDFs, and video content?
Not yet, but in future releases, we'll be addressing polls, surveys, forms, documents, all in a very innovative manner that currently isn't being done today, which then also will increase the usability and also reduce cost over a period of time within your organization.
Great. I know Viscardi's looking for the future on that one. And I guess the last one here, Mark, is how do companies partner with CurbCut?
We just start having a conversation. I mean, we like to make it easy. I mean, we're not difficult to work with.
Okay. Oh, actually, one more had just come in. Can this solution be used for creating graphic designs?
No, not right now. Eventually, we will have color contrast and design elements within the system. We already have a color contrast analyzer internally, but it's not integrated into the system yet because this is our first release.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Well, we are approaching the end of our time today, so I'm going to begin wrapping up our session. One last item before we end our time together. I ask you to respond to one final question. Now, if you're feeling deja vu, there is a reason. This is the same question I had asked at the beginning of the session. We're very curious to observe any differences in the group's response. So again, please answer it honestly. Doing so will help us evaluate our effectiveness. Please note that your responses are anonymous, and answering the question honestly is essential to helping us understand your needs and our effectiveness. So please take a moment to answer it. The question should be appearing on the right-hand side of your screen again. And that question is, one more time, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your understanding of digital accessibility best practices, processes, and metrics? Please use the scale of 1 equal very little understanding, while 5 equals extensive understanding. And we'll give WebEx a few more seconds to tally up the results. Okay, looks like we're at 3s and 4s, and mostly 4s. So nice job, Mark. We were able to move the needle today with our session. Thank you, everyone, for completing this question again. As I briefly mentioned earlier, immediately following today's event, you'll be asked to complete a survey about your experience. We strongly encourage you to please do so in order to help us continue to provide valuable trainings moving forward. If you would like to learn more about digital accessibility services at the Viscardi Center, please contact either myself or Jim Corporal, Digital Accessibility Coordinator at the Viscardi Center. Our contact information is now listed on the screen, or you can simply go to das.viscardicenter.org and fill out the Interested in Learning More form, and someone will reach out to you as soon as possible. This has truly been an excellent discussion, and I know we barely scratched the surface on this important topic. Today's session has been recorded and will be made available on the Viscardi Center's website within 2 weeks from today and can be accessed for future reference. Mark, you, as always, have been absolutely fantastic, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time today to share your knowledge with us. And finally, thank you to our audience for joining us here today as well. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion. And just to remind you one more time that the Viscardi Center greatly values your input, and we hope you will complete the survey that will pop up on your screens immediately following this session. Once again, my name is Mike Caprera, and we thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.